So we are going to start a new unit related to fundamentals of therapeutic massage. We're going to start unit 2. In your hands-on classes, we have been working on unit 3 material. So that starts the hands-on content. And so when we get into unit 3, that will start to reinforce the thought process with that. But unit 2 is really important because it sets the stage and expands on how we are thinking practitioners as opposed to doing practitioners. We think and do, not one or the other. So let's see if I can manage to share the screen. And so, I never can quite figure this out, but that's okay. Here we go. So there is our Mosby's Fundamentals of Therapeutic Massage, 7th edition. And we are going to take a look now at what Unit 2 is about. So let's open the book. And take a look here at what we got here. We have 3 chapters in Unit 2. We have research literacy and evidence-informed practice. This is the foundation for how we become critical thinkers and clinical reasoners. And then how do we begin to understand when massage is beneficial, and then when we need to begin to take a look and go, is this safe? Is there a risk of harm? And that would be what the, I'm checking to see if we're recording. Yep. That would be where we would look at, is there enough benefit to override any risk? Because there's always risk. And the expectations for benefit are reasonable. And then with the contraindications, it's not really that we don't do massage for the most part. There's a few situations, but it's how do we adapt, either adapt the positioning, the pressure, the duration, how long we do massage. How do we alter it based on the unique situation of the client? And there are some general guidelines with that, but there aren't any black and white specific answers other than when in doubt, don't. If you're in doubt, if you don't feel good inside yourself about something, then probably you need to learn more about it. And or you need to refer that client so that you have more information. And then chapter 7, which has always been important for massage therapists, but as we have now learned from being in a pandemic, or regardless of where we are with that right now when you're listening to this, the importance of hygiene, sanitation, and safety. And safety is bigger than the hygiene and the sanitation. We're talking about workplace safety here, and making sure that you have the ability to pre-think what you would do in case of an emergency. So let's begin. I'm going to open this up for the full screen. A reminder again that you have your read to feature here. I'm going to make the font bigger so that I can see it. Okay. So as we look at an overview then of this unit, which we call Foundations for Massage Benefit, we're going to start to get into more specifically the idea of what are evidence-informed outcomes, how do we approach a person's care, and as opposed to a modality or a method, We've talked about Swedish massage, or maybe we think about a cultural approach like shiatsu. We are more thinking more large, as massage is a unique system within manual therapy. That these are what are called categories of care, and they are specifically related to the client's goal and their adaptive capacity. Now, adaptive capacity means how much reserve does your body have, or what is your ability to respond to a stressor. And massage is a stress because stress is a demand to adapt. So our hope is that it's going to end up with stress reduction, but we still have to understand that. And so somebody who is experiencing kind of a chronic condition that can ebb and flow, some days are better than others, we have to really gauge where that person is that day. So we have our palliative care, and this is not, sometimes this word is used primarily in the medical environment, but this is about what is going to occur right at that time, and that is going to be soothing and support well-being. It's not about trying to identify, to reverse some sort of malfunction or some sort of mobility issue, or that's going to require more activity or more adaptive capacity by the client. What it is the relaxation, well-being, and inherently you're going to get some stress management with that. The general full body massage with moderate pressure in about 50 minutes to an hour, that does not have a level of intensity that requires the client to endure it, doesn't make them flinch up or anything. Good pressure to the extent that the person finds that pleasurable, but not so that it can cause any kind of tissue damage that would be an additional adaptive capacity. That is your foundation for palliative care. And you, of course, that's what we focus on initially learning in the classroom. So this is the foundation for every other category of care that we have. And that foundation becomes our assessment process as well for these other categories of care. And so in the palliative care category, we're not looking to make changes, we're looking to soothe and comfort, which is possibly our most important outcome. Restorative care is a little bit more. It will challenge the adaptive, these all go to adaptive capacity. It will challenge the adaptive capacity a little bit more. So let's think of a gas tank in a vehicle. You've got, you're going to go to work, or you're going to go on a road trip, or you're going to drive or something, and you're going to use gasoline or maybe electricity, depending on what kind of vehicle you work with. And so you have started out with a capacity in the tank or in the battery charge, and then you're going to use that. And it's really hard to sometimes use something and at the same time build it back up. So you start from a point where you have capacity, and then you expend energy. Gary has entered Gary the cat is wiping his head on the computer here. So he's our buddy along with our chirp and tweet. So with restorative massage, what we're trying to do is go, okay, this is where the person started in their capacity this day, this week, this month. And these are the activities or the issues that they had to use resources for. And now what we want to do is support what it will take to start to build those resources back up again, to fill the tank or to charge the battery. So restorative care is going to have a little bit more specific assessment to it. We're going to want to, just like with palliative care, we want to screen for any contraindications and cautions where we have to adapt. So if a person's got a bruise, regardless of the category here, we're going to want to make an adaptation around that. Or if they have skinned their knee or whatever. I mean, that's always in the background with stuff. So with restorative care, we might want to take a look at where have the resources been most used. So doing these clips to guide your study through the textbook requires that I sit by the computer, and there's a lot of thinking on my part, because even though I do these without rehearsals, I have to really stop and pre-think what's going on. So there's a lot of brain work. And so that can make me more tired mentally, and less, and a reversal on that would be more to move my body. So possibly in that sense, with a restorative care for massage where the drain has been in the brain, that it might be a situation now where there's a more physicality, there's more not aggressiveness, but more intensity to the massage to try to create a balance there. Now, if a person is used their energy in a situation where they have exerted a lot of physical activity, then it may be that the massage in and of itself is going to create a relaxation type parasympathetic response, because that's when we restore ourselves. In addition to that, we might look at areas that might need a little additional help. So I think of seasonal yard work. So in the spring we dig, and in the fall we rake. And so that's not, those two activities are not something that we typically will do on a daily basis, so that our bodies have adapted to it. It's kind of a new activity. And so we might put additional focus on the neck and shoulders. Our outcomes might be a little bit more in the functional mobility and some relief of some general soreness. So that's restorative. Condition management means that there is some sort of issue, some sort of condition going on with a person that is always going to influence adaptive capacity. So typically we think of this as maybe a chronic illness, an autoimmune condition, a chronic pain as opposed to acute pain. But it can be age-related. It can be work-related. If somebody has a job that requires them to do a repetitive activity over and over and over, then that's going to strain that movement pattern, and some massage might target to assist that, not necessarily reverse it, but take it back to where the person can use that movement again without it progressing and getting worse. In a more mental situation, somebody who is taking care of an elder or is taking care of young children, there's just a lot of activity there that's not going to go away quickly. And so both on a physical and a mental, emotional level, trying to keep that contained and not, it's kind of like laundry, you have to keep doing it over and over and over. And this is the category of care that massage, palliative, restorative, and condition management. This is the area where we thrive. This is where we have the most to offer people. Therapeutic change is more about what people would think of as reversal or maybe a quote, 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 fix. And while massage can be part of that, therapeutic change typically will involve a multiple disciplinary approach to that, as does condition management, because if somebody has an autoimmune condition or if somebody has a cardiac condition and overall they're functioning very well, they still are taking medication. There still might be some physical therapy involved. We still are going to interface with other professionals, both in health and wellness as in the medical realm. And so the information around indications, contraindications, medications, pathology, pharmacology, that there's an uptick here in the condition management and the therapeutic change. And both of these, restorative care and condition management, this is where your retention client base lives. Where and for therapeutic change, now we're actually after a reversal. This is more akin to what people are looking at in maybe physical therapy, where somebody has a condition, they are being treated for that with multiple professionals, and we are part of that care team. If after a few years and you gain a lot of experience and have done due diligence with your continuing education or your own self-teaching, some of these more minor levels of therapeutic change, we might be able to work with autonomously. Back to our restorative care situation, somebody has hurt their shoulder or their low back, and they just need help getting that back to its most optimal function that's available there. I suppose you could consider that a therapeutic change. These three, palliative care, restorative care, and condition management, they're the ones that have the most evidence, most research, and other forms of evidence. Therapeutic change, this reversal idea, does not have nearly as much. And in order for us to effectively work as in this category of care, we truly would be part of an interdisciplinary team. There is some ethics around this in our community, the massage therapy community. A lot of people would think that this area right here is where there's the most status, where they are doing work that is worthwhile. And I challenge that. I want to challenge that with my students, and I want to challenge that in general. Here, palliative care, restorative care, and condition management, this is where we do our work. And sometimes it will work into this therapeutic change. So that's kind of an overview of where we're going a little bit with this chapter. So let's look at this research chapter, chapter 1. This is an interesting chapter. It's divided into sections, just like all the chapters are in the textbook. And it's a process. This is a process chapter. This is something that you'll work with, not just while you're in school, but you will want to continue to advance in your ability to do a literature research, to always be a self-teacher and continue to learn. And certainly critical thinking comes into play here as you evaluate research that you might find. So these are the things that we are going to delve into as you read this textbook. This is not necessarily a memorization chapter. This is more about awareness, concepts, and principles. There is some language that you may need to have more of a utilization ability with it, and research-based language, because you may find that content on the MBLEX exam. But for the most part, this is a way of being as opposed to a way of doing. So here are your key terms, and the overview here starts to connect chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3. And it's worth going back, taking a look at that every time we move into a new chapter. Remember I explained to you that the program is developed on a spiral, and each concept, each factoid, each skill wraps itself forward as you progress and mature in your learning. So one of the things that has always been, and this is in medical practice too, is massage an art or a science? Well, it's both. And even in an art, like a musician, they still have concrete data that they have to absorb to understand how to use their art supplies. And so they have to look back at what has worked and what hasn't worked, and then they can build on it from there. A surgeon certainly is going to have hard skill set development. But when they actually are doing a surgery and working with an individual, it becomes an art. It becomes based on ongoing decision making, based on experience and how to kind of respond and adapt at the time. A skilled medical diagnostician definitely has a solid science background, but the ability to connect those dots and put that all together and come to a reasonable diagnosis, that's really an art. So you have to have both. And one isn't more important than the other. But the science is your foundation and a huge part of your critical thinking, so you cannot ignore that. So here we talk about ideas of intuition, and where does that come from? And how do we start to connect all the dots and pull things together based on our own past experiences, our own current understanding, our past education. How does that all come together in order for us to effectively do something right now? So mindfulness is it's kind of the new term for an expansion on meditation, but it's being present right now, focused right now. When I'm doing these videos, this is what I do. And a little bit ago, I had a phone ring, and that distracted me for a minute, and I had to reestablish my mindfulness. So I'm in a room in my home office all by myself, looking out my little window here, and it's an environment where I can get myself into something, sometimes what's called the zone, and I can imagine all of you out there so that I'm talking to you. That's how I feel when I do these. And then we have to also understand this concept of biologically plausible. And this is something we've talked about already. And in lieu of kind of a solid evidence based, where the evidence is pretty solid, the research and the review of that research, it's pretty much considered factual. Now that always can change, always can change. We still are searching for that with massage, and it may be always hard to find because there's so many small components and factors involved with the massage therapy practice, the relationship. And it's hard to tell what caused what. But if we're going to say that we're going to target a particular outcome like fluid movement or change in muscle tone or something along those lines, we're going to do that with massage, then what we need to do is look at what's normal, what do we know scientifically, and for us biologically, what do we know? And is our thought process logical as we think about that? And a lot of the concepts that we use here in these textbooks, both here and Essential Science, this is a huge factor, this idea of being plausible. It allows for a little flexibility. It allows us to broaden out our idea. We don't want to be cornered in only being able to think one way. We want to be able to think creatively, but at the same time, if we also embrace that idea of mimic normal, then that falls into this biological plausibility. So an example of that might be, and then this gets into our idea of correlation and causation. When a client comes in for a massage, typically, not always, but typically they're in a room with one person that's quiet and calm, and they're laying down and the lights are dimmed and there might be some music. And that in and of itself can bring about the relaxation response. It can support a parasympathetic rest and restore. That probably, in my opinion, is just as much part of the achieving the results as anything that I might actually do during the massage with a method. So it's hard to know, and that's okay. It's okay. So most everything in this book and in the Essential Science book is based on evidence. And when that evidence is not sufficient, certainly the idea of biological plausibility. So this is what evidence-informed is. And you can read through this. This is a little bit more about some definitions here. Evidence is what has gone before. Something has happened. It can be an experience. It can be a research study. It can be what happened in the massage before and after. So as we are trying to make decisions about what we're going to do again, then we want to look back and try to consider things that um, have the ability to have a good uh, idea that they're going to have some practicality and that they're going to be beneficial. And this is not an antidote. This is not somebody saying, okay, I did this to somebody and this helped. And then, you know, or a client's, you know, is saying, I went to another massage therapist and this is what they did. And I want you to do that. And all of that kind of stuff, that's more anecdotal. And that, like with subject matter experts, when there's an agreement among a group, as opposed to there being just one person's opinion, then that can start to be a reliable source of evidence. And we want to be careful with the idea of pseudoscience. At the same time, some things that we now consider as plausible and or scientifically validated started out as pseudoscience. The microbiome is an example of that. And so, remember, this is live entertainment that's been recorded. I had to take a phone call. So we are back here, and we were talking about evidence-informed massage therapy practice. You know what mentoring tips are, and this one kind of focuses on how information can change. And we really have to be okay with that. We also have to be okay with not knowing for sure. The other thing we have to stop and really think about when we're looking at evidence is how we would bias it. And has the research been biased because people want to have the outcome they're expecting? Or are people, it's called cherry picking, are they picking out just the stuff that supports their idea? So, you know, we don't want to do that, but we can't help it. Everybody biases things. And so the scientific method in and of itself is a way to minimize the influence of bias. And there's lots of different kinds of biases and how it influences our decision making. You might want to do a search on bias and see what all of those different ones are. Here's correlation and causation again, and it really can interfere with our understanding of what really is making a difference. And so we don't want to fall into that trap. So research literacy is the ability to find research related to what we're trying to have a better understanding about. It's not about being a researcher. It's about using research. And that's what's the main focus of this chapter is how do you develop a question to research? And then where can you go to get that information? And then how do you evaluate the quality of the research that you have found? And then how will that inform the decision that you're trying to make based on that information? It would be odd if any of you had not had to do a research paper in high school or in college. And so you've had the ability to already look at this. You've had some experience with it. So this is going to give you hopefully a review, and it's going to give you some strategies called the Pico Strategy on how you would formulate a question to explore so that you are guided and not get distracted, or you're getting answers that aren't related to the question that you're trying to answer. So we're so very fortunate now that we have the internet, and there are many good sites that you can use that have what's called peer-reviewed content. And the first one that has peer-reviewed content, and that means that somebody has done some research, but others have looked at that. I've done a lot of peer reviewing, and I take that very seriously when I'm asked to do that. I'm not a researcher per se. I don't have the mindset for that, but I absorb research, and I digest it, and I find ways to make it palatable. I am able to bring it down into an understanding and a terminology, make it relevant for massage. So PubMed is always my go-to. And as far as actual research, Medline is my information. Lots of times I'll start with Medline and see what general information is already out there. And then I'll check on Google Scholar too. But Google Scholar is not quite as rigorous in its peer review as PubMed. So get really good at PubMed. Go to your local library. Your librarian will help you with this. You'd be surprised the resources that the library has available. So this is about PubMed particular, and there's some really good tutorials and all that right there for you. And one of the things that I want you to do with this chapter is I want you to get on PubMed. I want you to get on Medline Plus. I want you to get on Google Scholar. I want you to do a simple research and see what you can find. And so this is going to give you some guidance on what you can do with that. Always stop at a box and pay attention. And there are lots of different types of research. So this section is going to define what those types are. And systematic reviews and meta-analysis is our highest form of research. And I am scientific type research. I am thrilled that I was able to use systematic reviews and meta-analysis in the second part of this chapter to provide an evidence-informed justification for the main outcomes for massage. Not all evidence is the same, and so this box is going to give us an overview of what that is. And that will take us to the actual research process. And so I'm going to stop this video here. And part 2 of chapter 4 is where we will start on what actually goes into all of that and what is the scientific method. So stop share. There I am. And we will convene again shortly.